Yes, welcome all to the Etty Hillesum House and online to the second part of the Etty Hillesum Education Exchange event, Middelburg and Canterbury. In 2021, the first plans were made to create an educational exchange around Etty Hillesum between Middelburg and Kent, in order to put Etty Hillesum and her texts more fully into the limelight within the educational field. After all, Etty Hillesum, the Jewish diarist from Middelburg, has much to say to us today. Her writings are universal and relevant. During the Second World War, she wrote down important and deep thoughts about fighting feelings of hatred, war and persecution, but also about love, beauty, God, relationships and faith. Above all, her diary is also a testimony of a woman who, in a time of oppression, was able to follow her own path and remain true to herself. She took and maintained ownership of her life. Where the Nazis were out to dehumanize the Jews, Etty responded to her inner call, choosing humanity above everything. Etty writes initially for herself, but later on she addresses her words to the reader and to generations to come. In this quote from April 30, 1942, the Nazis then just decreed the wearing of the yellow star, Etty writes, "And then we flopped into armchairs and, with the steaming black coffee before us, reflected a bit on the Middle Ages and on history and on yellow stars and psychology. And in the years to come, children will be taught about ghettos and yellow stars and terror at school, and it will make their hair stand on end. But parallel with that textbook history, there also runs another. A few comfortable chairs, bought with the insurance money because all your possessions were wiped out of existence by bombs. A cup of coffee, a few good friends, a happy atmosphere, and a little philosophizing. And life being beautiful and worthwhile, all the same." Today we continue in Etty's spirit with part 2 of this education exchange event. On February 25th, the first day of this project took place in Canterbury, and it was a very special and successful event that you will hear more about later. Today we have a varied program with different speakers who, from their own background and expertise, will take you through their views on the importance of Etty Hillesum and her writings in the educational practice. The result of this overseas project is not only that knowledge has been exchanged and that collaborations for the future are established, but also that we have developed an array of educational materials on Etty. 2 existing teaching packets for primary and secondary education and an education film by Eeske de Klerk are now also available in English. In addition, a beautiful philosophy teaching pack has been composed by Philip Knight for secondary and higher education, and a short informative film about Etty and why we should read her work is produced. And this material can be viewed on the Etty Hillesum House website and ordered by sending an email to info@ettyhillesumhuis.nl. And of course we hope that as many educators as possible will introduce their students and pupils to this remarkable Jewish diarist. The Canterbury and Middelburg collaboration is a Straits Committee small project initiative co-funded by Kent County Council and the province of Zeeland. And today we will start with a presentation by Lauda Maartens, educator of the Etty Hillesum House and involved in many educational projects. Lauda will discuss some educational materials and address Etty's role in primary and secondary education. And after Lauda's talk, we will watch the film Becoming Who You Are. And the film is part of the art education project Etty Hillesum Becoming Who You Are. After the film, artist Liesbeth Labeur and poet Anna de Bruyckere will talk about how they, from their background, give shape to the education around Etty Hillesum. Dr. Philip Knight, an Etty Hillesum expert with much experience in education, will conclude the morning program with a presentation on the exchange day in Canterbury. And after that, we will have a lunch break. At 1 p.m., the afternoon program will start. And I will now give the floor to Lauda Maartens.
Life courses through one as a constant current in a great series of moments, each having its own place in the day. These are words of Etty Hillesum. For me, these are hopeful and confidence-giving words, and that is what we have to give young people, hope and confidence. Etty Hillesum in education. Impossible to miss. The presence of all of you, especially our collegiate friends from Canterbury, and the live stream proves its relevance. Why it is so important to introduce Etty Hillesum to young people. Sure, in her diary they can read about her daily life during the Second World War. But still more important is that which she wrote about her thoughts, feelings and questions about life. She wrote them down in such a way that leads people, young and old, to think about themselves, to discuss with themselves and with others the meaning of being in this world and their action in it. Because of this, young people earned it to attain knowledge through these thoughts, feelings and questions which they can take with them for a lifetime. This can be a source of inspiration in the process of becoming who they are. Quotes, words and texts tell them not only more about who Etty was, but may also open the door to the answer who they are. Providing answers to questions such as what is my life purpose and what can lead me to this purpose? The words of Etty can bring them to the insight that we don't have to be perfect. What matters is to do your best and to live in a good way. The 3rd July 1942, Etty wrote, "By learning to know and to accept one's own shortcomings, one increases one's own strengths." They learn step by step to think about themselves. For many of them it is difficult and needs courage. But, as Etty wrote, if you have enough energy for the small things in life, then you will also have it for the big things. A few weeks ago I used this quote in high school. The second part of the quest lesson was a writing assignment. Can you tell yourself which small things you want to have the energy for now, so you can do bigger things later? Text and quotes need not only to be read, but also need to be brought to life. Therefore, it is very important that pupils and students get the opportunity to reflect, to talk with each other about how they interpret the words and whether they can make a connection between their own life and the world in which they live. The 23rd September 1942, during her stay in transit camp Westerbork, Etty wrote, "And remember that every atom of hate we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable. Only 17 words about which so many things can be said. A little atom of hate. It is the beginning of small harassments, like those that happened in the years prior to the Second World War. Too few people lifted a hand to make it stop, and so it could grow to a far greater evil, on which was seemingly impossible to turn away from or turn around. It seems evident to me that young people are able to understand these words, but that these words make more impact, acquire even more meaning when they are invited to talk with each other about these words, which are still relevant in their own world. Young people are able to reflect on themselves and on the world in which they live. Furthermore, they like to act and to participate. They want to act as a remedy for all kinds of things which are wrong in this world. The words of Etty Hillesum can stimulate their thoughts and transpose them into actions. Etty asks herself, how can one turn words and thoughts into effective actions? And she gives the answer to these questions and provides us with examples. Examples which give all of us a push in the right direction. It gives us support to do those things which we have to do in the never-ending process to becoming who we are. Becoming Who You Are is the title of the film you are going to watch. It was a life motto of Etty Hillesum. Everyone wants to get the possibility to become who he or she is, and that asks effort from all of us. A few weeks ago, while at a high school speaking in front of a group of 15-year-olds, I have used 2 quotes and 2 questions. The first question was, what is the connection between becoming who you are and remember that every atom of hate we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable? And the second question, what is the connection between this quote and another quote? I no longer believe that we can change anything in the world until we have first changed the wrong in ourselves. I provided them with those questions and quotes, and to have them discuss the questions in small groups, and after doing this, letting the class know their opinion. Almost playfully, they talk about these questions, and their answers were surprising, wise and impressive. And perhaps you can understand, it is always a kind of feast for me to visit schools introducing Etty Hillesum to young people. The film Becoming Who You Are is a component of a teaching program. Etty Hillesum Becoming Who You Are, take a different look at yourself and the other. It is an educational project based on the diary of Etty Hillesum. This program is suitable for the oldest pupils of the elementary school, pupils about 11 and 12 years old. The complete program you can read in the teacher's guide, written in Dutch and translated into English. After having seen this film, 2 art professionals, Liesbeth Labeur and Bruyckere, will tell you more about in which way they give pupils time to make connection between the thoughts of Etty Hillesum, themselves and current events. For secondary school we have developed a teaching pack, also translated into English. Etty Hillesum, an inspiration for a life without hatred. It is suitable for all kinds of studies as history, literature, social and cultural studies, religious studies and philosophy. Philip Knight from Canterbury compiled an Etty Hillesum discussion pack suitable in all kinds of educational situations. At the end of this day program, you get the opportunity to have a look into his programs. I will finish this brief introduction to let you know that the last 5 years there had been already a lot of pupils, young and old, who have made knowledge with Etty Hillesum, here in this house and in their own schools. So, there have been planted many, many seeds, and that is hopeful.
Actually, I'm not Etty, but for now I'm playing Etty, because I would love to get inside Etty's head. Maybe we should all try to get inside Etty's head one day. Oh, she is? Oh yeah, I forgot you probably don't know that yet. I forget because her diary that I'm reading is so beautiful and terrible, and also kind of crazy sometimes. It feels like I've known her for years, even though she's been dead for years. She was murdered in Auschwitz in World War II. Every now and then I hear her words, her voice in my head. Maybe you will too, if you read her diaries. Do you know how it begins? Here goes then. This is going to be a painful and almost insurmountable moment for me. Surrendering my suppressed feelings to a blank sheet of blank paper. I often feel I'm now playing Etty again. I often feel a little shy. I'm not quite that daring. Or is it? I don't want to be. I feel inhibited. Like something inside me is putting on the brakes. Just flying with the wind like the birds do often doesn't work for me. Now, just writing down what I feel and think and want, that too takes a lot of courage. But I am determined. And also very curious. Come on, you can do it, Etty. I can do it. Because, you know, I would like to become a chronicler of the century. I want to know the century from the outside and the inside. I want to experience and write down all kinds of things, as if my life and my world are an exciting book, and I am the writer, the main character, and the curious reader in one. It is now 1941. The war is almost 1 year old. I myself am 27. I now live in Amsterdam, but more importantly, I have recently started living between the covers of my diary, so I am already a writer, with myself as the main character. With every word I write, I get to know myself better, as if I'm being reborn, word by word. In a manner of speaking, because I was born in a Dutch town called Middelburg. I lived there as a baby together with my father, mother, and my brothers, Misha and Jaap. Later, we moved to Deventer. In Deventer, the days were a single, long, sunny expanse, and I felt together with other people. There was the River IJssel, with the colorful umbrellas with thatched roofs, and then the sun, which I let in through every pore of my skin. Here in Amsterdam, my life has changed, I admit. Little is left of those sunny, happy moments. It is grey and wintry here. The shadow of war lies over everything. Carefree strolling along the water or through the city is no longer so easy. Looking out of my window, I see that the square is filling up with angry people, sirens and shouts. And every day something happens that really frightens me. For example, when you stand in line at the Gestapo. That's the Nazi secret police. Are you the little boy there, on the left, hiding between the legs of his parents? And is that your mother and father? Why you had to come, you don't really know. And there is a young officer of the Gestapo. He looks very dissatisfied, like he hasn't been able to go to the toilet for days. Hunted, tortured, and whatever you do or don't do, he thinks it's wrong, and then he shouts at you, "Hands out of your bag! Shut up!" And imagine you have to smile. I myself often smile without realizing it. Do you have that too? Maybe at a funny thought, maybe from nerves. And imagine that Gestapo officer seeing that, comes up to you and roars, "Why are you smiling?" And he makes his words crackle like firing guns. You say you didn't realize it, or meant anything by it, that this is your usual face. He roars that you shouldn't mess with him, and his eyes shoot as hard and furious as his words. That's pretty scary. And yet, scared? Really scared? You don't need to be, because that Gestapo officer is only a man. Was once just a child too. Yeah, something like that happened to me last week at the Gestapo. An officer at the long line could not stand me smiling. Don't get me wrong, something like that doesn't leave me cold. I'm really not an ice queen or overly brave. But if you stop to think about it, what is the matter with such a person who wants to destroy someone else? I say such a person, but I don't mean only the Germans. This also applies to you and to me. The rottenness of others is in us too. And I see no other solution. I really see no other solution than to eradicate all that rottenness in our life. Otherwise, we will continue to destroy each other and ourselves. I no longer believe that we can change anything in the outside world until we have first changed ourselves for the better. And that seems to me to be the only lesson of this war. So how do you do that? Change yourself? Well, this morning, for example, I was cycling along the quay in Bruyckere. I was enjoying the white sky. The Nazis cannot take it away from us, or ration it. Really? Getting out of the city and into nature is not possible. There you see the signs, forbidden for Jews. We are not even allowed to go to school anymore. Many shops and city neighborhoods are off limits. That's so wrong, and they can just do it. The Nazis want our total destruction. They want all Jews dead. It scares me, sometimes. But I don't get bitter. I promise myself. They won't receive hatred back from me, nor any fear either. Because I find life itself, beautiful and meaningful. I still do. I would like to live a long time and write it, to be able to explain it all later. But hey, wait a minute. Etty knows she is in great danger, that the Nazis want to kill her and all the other Jews. I mean, winter is at the door. In fact, it's already here, with all those signs saying forbidden for Jews. Yet she still finds life beautiful. Yet she doesn't get scared or bitter, and continues to look with kindness at the Gestapo officer and other Germans. Is she crazy or something? Or how can that be? Well, where were we again? When we were before, in Amsterdam in 1941, we are no longer there. This is 1943, near Camp Westerbork. I believe the world is beautiful everywhere, even in the places the geography books say are dry and barren without imagination. Dry, barren, and without imagination, it really isn't here. But with the Germans calling the shots here, it is dangerous. Shabby, desolate. They send us by train to Germany and to Poland, wagon after wagon. Cramped and dark. Even the old people, even the sick. But take it all in. Someday I'll tell how it was here, about what we humans can do to each other, and about how beautifully the purple lupins continue to bloom in the midst of all the horror and cruelty. Because we must not forget, I love autumn. The orange and yellow of the trees. I love even a restless autumn day like today, here in Middelburg in 1943. They have put us on transport today, waved off, sent on a journey, not to the sun, not on holiday, but to Poland. Nobody knows what will happen, but it's certainly not going to be good. And yet, we left the camp singing. Even the camp singing? It's really there, on that last postcard we had from Etty. She threw it out of the train that took her that day, together with 986 other Jews to concentration and extermination camps. Was she sitting on her backpack, there in that crowded train? Did she know she would be dead a few months later, as with most of the people around her, sooner or later? She kept seeing the beauty in the people and the world around her, despite the fear, the injustice, and the danger. Until the last moment. I find it so hard to understand. Made me go quiet. Hopeful as well. And you?
Hello. This was the movie we showed to the young children we are teaching about Etty Hillesum. At Anna de Bruyckere arrived. We work together in the workshop we give about Etty Hillesum. And is it okay for the camera if I stand here? Okay, because I really want to show you this one. It's yeah, so I just tell a few minutes about this painting. Maybe you can look at this. When we have showed the children the movie and we talk about Etty Hillesum, it's very serious. And then we go to the workshops and they are painting what they think about Etty Hillesum. We are talking about how she looks like. Did she have brown eyes or blue eyes, or what hair does she have, and what are her words? And then children just give their own expression about what they think about Etty. And while they're painting, we have a very nice way of talking, because they're just very busy, and then they say, "Oh, I don't understand why Etty go with the train to that camp. Why did she choose to go?" And then we ask children, maybe you have a suggestion why. And it's so interesting to not only talk and let the children listen to you, but it's very nice to talk to them and with them and to paint about Etty Hillesum. And it's also very nice what they paint, because there we have the Long Jong. It's a tower in our city, and we have the train, and it's all going over the painting, the canvas. And you see also very nice details about old translations of the words. the words of Etty. Sometimes very easy, but it's always something positive. And it's also nice. We had one boy. He was a boy with a colored skin, and he painted Etty Hillesum with color. And we have every canvas. We have people who not paint Etty Hillesum with brown eyes. I think she had brown eyes, but they are painting her with blue eyes, or they're painting her with color. So Etty Hillesum, they are just making her one of them, and that's very nice. I like it. And we made this canvas with, I think, 100 children. And so we are making canvas after canvas after canvas, and that's very beautiful. You also see some other paintings here in the building, because there's not much left of Etty Hillesum. Yes, the most important, but how do we tell everything about Etty Hillesum to the world? And therefore it's very nice to not only speak in words about her, but also to make images about Etty Hillesum. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you. And now I give the words to Anna de Bruyckere.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Sorry for being late. Just this week, maybe Liesbeth and Lauda mentioned it, or Lotte. Just this week we had some more workshops, some more schools coming to the house. Is that what you call it? Etty Hillesum House? Yeah. Okay. I'm not here doing my workshops. I go to the schools. So Liesbeth and Mo do the workshops here. And a few days later, sometimes 2 weeks later, I go into the schools, and it's kind of a way to pick up on where we left with the visual workshops. It's a way of trying to see whether they remembered anything. I'm an artist, but I'm enough of a teacher to want them to retain some of the information as well. What I go and do in schools is write with them. When I joined the project, it was already in the early stages, and there was no one yet to cover the writing part. But, well, I figured with someone who got known for writing a diary, it's really quite important to also have a writing component. I'm a writer myself. I started off as a poet, but now in the process of drafting my second draft of my first novel. I write theater, whatever. So writing to me is my main language, really. And it's something that I want to share with the kids as well, because I guess in this day and age, there's just so much distraction, there's so much going on, there's so much stimulation. But for me, and I guess that's for other people too, sometimes, writing can be a way of not closing yourself off, but just turning inward. And obviously that's what Etty did in her diaries as well. And I always start my workshops asking, so who of you really kind of hates writing? And well, just Wednesday I was at a school in Huis with 2 groups. The first group, everyone raised their hands. That was quite new. I'd never seen that before. But at the end, there were a couple of people who raised their hands when I asked, so how did you maybe kind of like this workshop? And they did. Luckily in the second class, I didn't have such an uneven playing field to start with. There were a couple of people who already wanted to write. But regardless of how they feel at the outset, I asked them, so if you like it, what do you like about it? And invariably, kids, maybe 10 years old or 12 years old, they come up with the answer of saying, it just gets so quiet in my head. I thought I'd forgotten all about it already. It was only 2 days ago, but I forgot everything about it. And now that you're asking some questions, giving some prompts, it's just coming back to me. And it's actually quite nice. I enjoy the recollecting. I enjoy the attention. I mean, some of the words I'm giving to it now are mine, recollection, but really the kids themselves come up with almost philosophical answers. And just the astonishment of some of them is to me really gratifying and also I think really hopeful. So yeah, that's what I do. I don't have the stunning visuals. I do have one visual, maybe. I don't know if it's in your PowerPoint. No? Okay. What I have is just little lined notebooks. They can take it away with them home. They can take it home. And I don't know what they do with it after, but I'm convinced that you're planting seeds. And I guess that's what we need to do. Are there any questions? No?
Yeah, what do you get them to write?
Good question, yeah. I'm trying to get them into writing a diary. So I always start off just saying, I'm just going to ask you some questions, no right or wrong answers. But really, I always start off with asking, so if you think back of the writing and painting with Liesbeth, I don't know how you say that, Mrs. Liesbeth, what is the first thing that comes to mind? And then I give them some more prompts, like maybe it's something you drew, or maybe it's a particular color that spoke to you, or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's something that happened while you were painting. And so I go through a couple of those questions. What do you recall first when you think back of the workshop with Bo, the metamorphosis, the dressing up? Also ask about the film. And then what would you like to say to Etty, or what would you like to ask her if she were still alive? I don't ask them to read that out loud. I mean, they don't have to read anything out loud if they don't want to. But then I kind of just give them a scoop. It's in a diary entry, because really it's all about what happened or what you're looking forward to and how it was for you. And then I go into some more details of, well, what is diary writing? Why do people do it? What does science say about it? I didn't know that before I started this project, but it's actually really good for you. I mean, I do it, but I didn't know there was science about it. And then as a writer, I give them some more, well, I guess the basics of any writing, really. It's about details, the right details. We don't get into the part of which details are right, but I want to get them to the part of details, because detailed attention, I guess, is as important for anything, really, because that speaks to you. Yeah, and then at the end they have about 10 minutes or so where I get them to write about something they want, or because obviously there's always many kids who don't really know what to write about. I say, well, what happened over Easter, or something close by, and maybe 10% of the students really don't get anything down, or maybe like 5 words. But often the teachers come up to me and say, I didn't know my kids could do this. But I guess that's the beauty also of what Liesbeth is doing and Bo is doing, is just bringing out something else than the usual.
Well, it's a combined question maybe. Do the paintings also stay in the school? And is there from maybe some children who would like to present their work? Do you make some like an exhibition here, or is it shown somewhere?
Good question. Maybe yes. We have saved all the paintings, and we have small ones and these great ones, and we sometimes have exhibitions when there is something about Etty Hillesum, for example, in the church here. We brought up the big paintings, and we also give a painting to the major, and so that's how we want to spread the word of Etty Hillesum, not only by words but also by art. Yeah, and it's very nice. What I also want to say, what makes me very happy, is that we have this educational program that is a circle of life. We have the very young children and their parents, of course, and so many people don't know who Etty Hillesum was or what she wrote, and we can tell them about her. And then you have Lauda, who goes to the high school, and then we also go to the HZ, it's the school after high school, And the house also has this reading circle, how do I call it, with the biography of Etty Hillesum. And so we have the whole circle of people who are here. So we hope it will bring, continue to spread the words about Etty. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's very nice.
one of the comments I often get about not just my workshop but also about yours, I think I put it in the WhatsApp group just this week, is that teachers are often really happy that they are getting a chance to talk about World War II and about war in general, like big themes, without only focusing on facts or the big narratives, because as in my workshop, you too, and with the Metamorphosis workshop as well, kids are continuously being asked to reflect. I mean, not just in words and cognitively, but just what is it? What does this do for me? What do I feel? What do I think about her decision to not go into hiding? How does it feel to dress up in a really strange way, or at least really different from usual? How did I feel about the workshops? And then what does kindness actually mean if you put it in these really concrete situations? So it's beyond the sometimes sensationalism about the good guys and bad guys.
Oh, it's very nice. Also, when they're talking about bullying in their group, it's so nice that you can use Etty to talk about this thing and to talk about discrimination. It's so important, and it's another way when they're writing or painting to talk about a subject than when you are just listening to someone. Yeah, it's so nice and important because it's not nice to spread hate. Not only one, what's een atoompje in het Engels? Atom?
Good morning. I'm Dr. Philip Knight, and with the help of Edward Heining, we organised the Etty Hillesum Day in Canterbury on the 24th of February, and I'm going to tell you something about that now. The Etty Hillesum Exchange Project, funded by the Straits Committee of Kent County Council and the Provincie Zeeland, brought together people and knowledge related to Etty Hillesum in cooperation between the Poetry Practice in Canterbury, which is headed by Victoria Field, who's sitting at the back there, and you'll be hearing from her this afternoon as well, and the Etty Hillesum House in Middelburg. Through 3 events, the project brought the name of Etty Hillesum, her relevance for future generations in Kent and the UK, a new audience. So it brought her name to a new audience, as well as to those who had heard something about her but wanted to learn more. So go to the next slide now. A crucial part of our project was aimed at education. The funding allowed us to translate a number of the Etty House educational resources from Dutch into English. The next slide. These included the video Worden Where Ye Bent, Becoming Who You Are, and the workbook that goes with it. This is a multidisciplinary educational project which we've already heard about from Lauda and the other 2 speakers. We also slide. We also translated the Etty Hillesum House's lesson pack for use in secondary schools. Although the video Becoming Who You Are is intended for the use with 9 to 12-year-olds, it is also suitable for any age, and can be used alongside educational materials designed for people older than 12. In addition, we have created a discussion pack for young people of all ages. More about that later. And we've created a new 8-minute YouTube video in English introducing Etty Hillesum and her works. We call this Etty Hillesum, Why You Should Read Her. And we'll see that later this afternoon, and we gave it its premiere at a synagogue in Kent, in Ramsgate, on Monday, and the Jewish audience were impressed and liked it very much. The invitation to this launch was issued to educators in the East Kent Schools Together partnership and those who attended our evening event on the 24th of February. We hope that some of them at least are able to join us today through the live streaming. The next slide. On the 24th of February in Canterbury, we invited Professor Klaus Schmelik, Bishop Rowan Williams, Dr. Lotte Bergen and Lauda Maartens from the Etty House to take part in this day in Canterbury. We'll skip slide 6, which is, that's that one, and go to slide 7. That's it, yeah. The day consisted of 3 events. First, a 2.5-hour academic seminar at Canterbury Christ Church University, in which Etty Hillesum's relevance for schools, universities and churches were discussed. Next slide. Class outlined 4 areas of immediate relevance. First, she is a chronicler of the Holocaust who describes history, he said, from the inside. Second, she wrote honestly about herself and the struggles for mental health, helping those with similar struggles, typical, he said, of students and academics today. Third, her reflection on hatred, love, and peace helps to create a path to reconciliation that will inevitably be required after the ending of any conflict and war. And he mentioned in particular the current conflict in Ukraine. And fourth, her testimony adds to a debate about the search for God. Rowan Williams took this point a little further. Etty, he noted, was open to the language about God and embodied this language in the gesture of kneeling, which was part and parcel of her response to suffering. Next slide. At all 3 events, we showed the English translation of the video Becoming Who You Are. And the second event in the afternoon, next slide, was to introduce Etty to local 6th form students, that's 16 to 19-year-olds, from a number of local schools, and that was hosted at the King's School in Canterbury. And they have their own theatre, the Malthouse Theatre, and we had use of that theatre. Klaas, Rowan and Lotte discussed 3 themes from Etty's diary: her refusal of hatred, the role of God and prayer in the development of her inner resilience and sense of agency, and her resistance of evil. Next slide. The panel then answered questions from a teenage audience, each participating school, and those who asked questions at the end were given copies of An Interrupted Life, the edited version of Etty's diary. To the surprise of those who asked the questions, they were very pleased to receive them. Like the morning event, the costs of the afternoon and that event, the cost of the afternoon event, were all covered by the host institution. But the next slide, the main event, the third event in the evening, was funded by the Straits Committee. and that was held at Canterbury Cathedral Lodge. Klaas Schmelik and Bishop Rowan Williams spoke on Etty's understanding of God. Next slide. Professor Schmelik focused on the complex relation of transcendence and immanence in Etty's language about and address to God, and Bishop Williams focused on the theological resonance of her concept of ripening, the ripening of both God and the poetic word within her. Both talks will be published in Volume 3 of K.A. Etty Hillesum sometime in the near future. There was a chance for the 200 plus audience to ask questions of the speakers and to find out more about the educational, artistic and cultural work of the Etty Hillesum House, to read quotes from the diary and to watch the video. Next slide. Two major consequences of the exchange is that Etty Hillesum's example is more accessible to the English-speaking world through the translation of the educational materials, and second, more people know of Etty Hillesum than did before. It is to be hoped that future projects might lead to further translation of these materials into French, German and Italian. Last slide. The discussion pack, which I designed, is aimed at sixth form students, undergraduates, adult discussion groups and adult discussion groups. It takes 4 themes from Etty's diary, each illustrated with a number of quotations to form the basis of this discussion. The 4 themes are inner and outer peace, the rejection of hatred, the promotion of love, and inner resilience. These can either be followed sequentially or on their own. Each theme comes with additional information for the discussion leader, who might also care to consult the lesson pack and the YouTube video. It is suggested that a large group be subdivided into smaller units of 4 or 5 persons with regular feedback sessions to the wider group. A set of rules for discussion is supplied, along with questions designed to stimulate the discussion. These questions lead into contemporary areas of concern and to practical activities. I thank the Etty Hillesum House for supplying the graphics and hope that those who come to use this pack will find it informative in relation to both the life of Etty Hillesum and the contemporary relevance of her writings. Thank you. I don't know if you've got any questions about the day in Canterbury that I haven't covered. Yes.
I was just curious, the film you showed to the sixth form,
Yes.
How did they respond? Because the film was meant for kids who were younger. Did they feel it spoke to them?
Yes, they did. They because they've never heard of her before. It is an extremely good introduction to her, and it speaks the language of the age of range that was there as well. We also showed it to the adults in the evening, and they appreciated it just as much. In fact, the bishop, the current Bishop of Dover, Bishop Rose, thought it was very good. She enjoyed the video, and she enjoyed the whole evening, but she mentioned the video, thought it was very good. Yeah. Although she did say the sound wasn't quite high enough for her. We had to turn it up because we showed it more than once. We had it on a loop, and the second time round during the break, and we turned up the sound so she could hear it more. Yeah.
It was a bit of a surprise. So first thought it would be inappropriate in the program as it was an evening for adults. So we put it in the break and upstairs and so on. But looking back, we might just put it in the program as well.
Yeah.
But it depends a bit on who sees it, if it speaks to adults or not.
Yeah.
Most of them, really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's right. And certainly the sixth form students did as well. So I think it fits in with, you know, a number of educational activities for different age groups. It's very good, a very good video.
And I also think that the actress did a very good
Oh
job.
yes, the actress is
She's also did the English voiceover.
Yeah.
And it fits so well that it's very difficult to spot that it's not in English.
Edward and I did the translation, mostly Edward for the video. Yeah. Thank you.
So, Lauda, thank you. Philip, thank you for your words, and Liesbeth and Anna as well for your contribution. Now we have a lunch break and we are back at 1 o'clock. So, till 1 o'clock.
Je zag wel heel veel mensen.
Ja, maar voor mij was het niet zo dat jullie niet uit alle windstreken van Europa pakken. Ja, dan zie ik wel waar een paar puntjes is. Maar ja, heel veel mensen kunnen dan ja, Luxemburg telt al niet mee.
Nee, Zwitserland doet bijna niet mee. Nee, Luxemburg ook niet. Dus dan is het in Vlaanderen. Ja, echt. Ja,
Of je moet de techniek willen doen.
right at the end of the PhD. So yeah, some kind of theory. I think it's yeah.
Welcome back. for our afternoon program. Philip Knight, expert on Etty Hillesum and an experienced teacher, will now talk about Etty and education in the UK and the developed lesson pack in dialogue with Etty. And Vicky Field will be the voice of Etty during the talk. After Philip's presentation, May-Britt Berrevoets, student at HZ Vlissingen, attending the Teacher College for Primary Education, will present a series of lessons about Etty Hillesum. Eeske Freesemann will talk about Etty Hillesum and the importance of her texts for her generation. She's also a student at HZ Middelburg, attending the Offshore Renewable Energy degree course, and she works as a volunteer for the Etty Hillesum House. She will share her thoughts about Etty's diary and the impact of the texts on her generation. And to make this more concrete, Eeske will tell us about her experiences during her visit in the Sachsenhausen concentration camp and Memorial Day of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising on 19 April 1943. After Eeske's words, Marcel Besuije, who is a history teacher at Nehalenia College in Middelburg, will speak about Etty Hillesum and the importance of Holocaust education and his experiences in his educational practice. And we will end this day with a short film we developed. It is a short informative film about Etty and why we should read her work. Philip, stage is yours.
As always, when I give a talk on Etty, and I've given many of those back in England, Victoria Field will be the voice of Etty. So the quotes from the diary will be read by Victoria. So Etty and education. The writings of Etty Hillesum have educational relevance for many subject areas: historical values and religious education, Holocaust education, literary studies, poetry, creative writing and journalism, early feminism, comparative biographical studies, spirituality and psychology are just a few. Here, I briefly identify 10 specific ways in which the writings of Etty Hillesum have relevance to the field of education. First, she wanted to be a chronicler of her times. In that respect, her letters and diaries are a primary source of information about the Holocaust, writings from the inside, as it were, as Klaus Schmeling puts it. Etty was not so much concerned with writing about the grand sweep of history, but preferred to focus on the small details that the history textbooks often leave unrecorded. For example, the proud cyclist wearing the yellow star like it were the first crocus in spring, or insurance claims for bomb damage. With her letters from Westerbork, the grand sweep of history and the individual details meet. According to Lawrence Langer, not an otherwise uncritical commentator, Etty is, quote, a vivid and accurate observer who accepted the role of recorder of human wretchedness. He goes on to note that she became, in her words, the ears and eyes of a piece of Jewish history. For example, to quote Langer again, describing the fear, confusion and helplessness of mothers and children preparing for deportation. One thinks perhaps of her account of the child whose failed attempt to run away from transport led to others being randomly put on transport as a collective punishment. These are important details of individual lives that are often lost in the general sweep of historical record. I think we had mention of that earlier from the artist about the importance of presenting to children the individual behind the figures. Second, on a related topic, the focus on the individual detail brings to the fore for all students of the Holocaust that when we speak of 6 million people, it is not the number, horrific as that is the unique individual behind the number that requires our focus. Etty's record reminds us of the singular individual murdered one by one to 6 million, each with his or her own complex life. Third, modern Aristotelian virtue ethics emphasises the educational importance of role models in the development of practical wisdom, phronesis. Etty shows herself to be among the phronimos, those with virtue one might learn from. With her discovery and habitual use of various disciplines such as regular exercise, meditation, reflective diary writing and prayer, all part of what she calls
a training in patience,
and what Speer called creating the right model.
Self-discipline, training and patience. If I were ever to have a motto, then it would be just that one word, patience.
Her sense of humour and her desire to see the beauty and meaning in life, even through sadness, suffering and death, are also part of her mould. The middle path of virtue, developed from habits of action, serve her well. For example, she writes,
"It seems a small thing, but it takes a great deal of struggle and self-education to go on from the theory of self-discipline and training to daily practice."
She gives the
slides, can you say?
Oh, sorry, yeah, we're on the second one now. Yeah, sorry. She gives the example of the transition from day to night and continues, next slide, third.
No, it's this one.
Oh, this
Yeah,
is,
yeah. In the past, the transition used to be much more of a shock for me. From day to night, from working to doing nothing, from being alone to being with others, they were all so abrupt. Now, everything merges more smoothly because an internal rhythm has emerged, a rhythm that is mine and mine alone. It may seem exaggerated, but it is quite true. To go to bed on time, to let go of the day voluntarily, requires discipline. One has first to have brought it home to one before it happens automatically and becomes part of one's life's rhythm.
In her diary, we come face to face with her habits of action, which she calls self-education, that make her a role model for attaining practical wisdom. There are things, Etty tells us, which only self-education can attain. Things like not succumbing to an inferiority complex, not allowing new friends to push out older ones, developing a habit of self-control, or learning
to rely on your own resources, to be self-confident.
In her own life, phronesis finds expression in the contingency of the middle path she traversed between acceptance and moral indignation. Following that path with her might be a fruitful educational exercise in which young people might learn to discern between various contingencies of their own day so as to navigate their own path through the extremes they encounter in life. One might add one further navigation, perhaps of value to feminist thought, And my fourth theme, the practical wisdom required navigating gender relations. I think particularly of the navigation between her desire to remain single and the traditional expectations on women to wed. In summary of this section, Etty is a role model of habit acquisition upon which an education into practical wisdom is based and virtue arrived at. Fifth, the diaries are an education about freedom and relationships.
With him and through him, I must learn to free myself from him,
she writes in reference to Julia Speer, and adds,
the stupid thing is that I am free of him in theory, but don't always live like it in practice.
The diaries are a lesson in independence in relationships. Sixth, and a point I will focus on a little more. Etty, it should be remembered, is herself a teacher and seems to have had her own philosophy of education. The Russian lessons she gives to private pupils seem to be weekly and last variously between an hour and an hour and a half, and as far as we can tell, require of her a degree of preparation time. A teacher, she says, is like a builder, constructing knowledge in another person, but also like a dentist, she says, helping pupils through the pain. The teacher, she notes, must be open about their own mistakes and not feel any embarrassment by them. Nevertheless, Etty takes to heart the advice that a teacher must be master of what they teach. Perhaps that is why she finds it easier to teach Russian than to teach chirology. She also notes,
to teach others, you must first take yourself in hand, with some spiritual hygiene.
And we have already noted the teacher must also be a role model. And she says, the attention they give to their pupils must be greater than that which they give to their own philosophizing. Although she is able to fulfill the demands of her teaching role, she sometimes notes when feeling unwell or unfit that the role is less than inspiring, but when the time comes for the lesson, she teaches it
with my well-known enthusiasm.
But should a pupil phone or cancel a lesson,
I'm as happy as a lark.
Or again on another occasion,
thank God, another pupil phoned to cancel, so the whole afternoon is mine.
Etty did not confine herself to simply teaching her students the Russian language. She also took a psychological interest in the students as well. She notes,
I know it will be one of my future tasks to mediate between Russia and the West. With my small circle of pupils, I am already trying to implement that task as best I can by trying to give them, in addition to grammar, some idea of that mysterious country in the East. But to do that properly, I still have a lot to learn myself.
This requires her to learn more about her own subject.
My growing number of pupils forces me to perfect my knowledge of the language all the time.
In the clearest account of her educational philosophy, she notes,
I teach all my pupils with the same intensity, pleasure, and dedication, to use a big word for once, regardless of how boring or interesting I may find them. As a matter of fact, I have noticed that my pupils and the subject matter keep inspiring me. Another big word, but I do indeed give them my best during my lessons. I don't just teach them words and phrases, but establish close human contact, which probably has productive repercussions on the lesson as a whole.
Although her mother offers to take on Etty's pupils when she becomes an employee of the Jewish Council in July 1942, it seems she is still giving lessons in January 1943. To move to the seventh of my 10 aspects of Etty and education, we might note that the philosophical concerns of the diaries legitimate their use in education as sources of reflection and debate concerning perennial human concerns, such as how we might create both inner and outer peace, reject the hatred we all sometimes harbour within us, and promote love instead, and how we might acquire the inner resilience we need to achieve these things. This was the aim of the discussion pack I introduced this morning. Eighth, Etty and the diaries and letters exemplify the practice of values which education aims to foster, not just inner resilience, but also the values of dignity, self-confidence, hope, and joy. But one's teacher is not always a human being. Etty allows trees, her room, her desk, or a room, rather Speer's room it is she's referring to. So trees, a room, a desk, her desk, and God to be her teacher. Ninth, from a religious perspective, the diaries are an education into the use of the word God and the value of the practice of prayer. Both Clash-Mellick and Bishop Rowan Williams chose to focus on this aspect of Etty Hillesum's educational insight in the event in Canterbury on the 24th of February. Finally, Etty's diaries are an education in writing itself. Even if she says with a smile,
I no longer want to be this century's most famous writer. All I want is to find a few words now and then.
her use of metaphor and simile sparkle throughout the diary, and as we read, we detect the process of a writer in development. We notice the power of writing to heal the mind, and we are left pondering what the experience of reading her proposed novel, The Girl Who Learnt to Kneel, or the philosophical tome Beyond Love and Hate, which perhaps she intended to write, would have been like had she been granted the time to pen them. These are just 10 ways in which reading Etty's diaries might impact on education. There are more, not least the development of her rich inner life, in which everything, her room, her desk, her lamp, her home, the people she knows, are all carried inside her wherever she goes. To conclude, I would go as far to say that there is perhaps not a single page of her published diaries and letters that is lacking in educational relevance. Thank you for your attention.
So, hello. I designed some lessons for primary school, where Etty Hillary stands central. So, first I'm going to give a little introduction about me. Then I will tell the lessons I have designed, and at the end I have some additional lesson ideas. So, I'm May-Britt, and I'm a student from the Huis University. I'm learning to teach to be a primary school teacher, and I'm in my second year. The Etty Hillesum House has contacted Anita, my teacher from the HZ, and they asked if someone would like to make a serie about Etty Hillesum, and Anita asked me to do it because she knows I'm very interested in the World War history, and then especially the local persons during this war. So that's how this all started. So, what did I design? I designed 2 lessons about Etty Hillesum from the older groups of primary school. I recommend teaching these lessons from the age about 9. And I also designed a number of additional teaching ideas related to World War II and Etty Hillesum. In the following slides, I will explain what these lessons entail, how I designed them, and which ways the students are engaged with Etty Hillesum. In the first lesson, we will mainly talk about Etty Hillesum and who she was, and why she was so important during and after World War II. This is something we do through Lesson Up. It's an interactive way of teaching. The students are given the opportunity to fill in some answers online, like you see over there. And they answer quiz questions in between, so they have to listen in a focused way. This will make a lesson which you tell a lot so much more fun for the students because, yeah, they can answer something online. After the students know who Etty Hillesum was and why she was so important, they will work on an assignment in groups of 3 to 4 people. They will work with a quote from Etty, and they are going to think what would she means by this quote, how would Etty have felt, how will I feel, and why does she wrote this quote? So they will think about that, and they can write it down on paper, or they can make a presentation. That's all up to the children. And then at the end, after the class, each student gets their own diary, because Etty Hillesum stands for the diaries, and they will write the next 3 weeks their own diary. They can choose what they write down. It can be simple, or they can choose it, and they don't have to let me read it, only if they want to, or they can let it read it to their friends. It's up to the children. This way they will experience what it's like to keep a diary and what they're doing in a day. Because if I ask a student, so what did you eat last night? They don't know it. So if they write the little things down, they will appreciate it a little bit more and they will remember more, so they can read it also back. Then the second class, after 3 weeks, I will pick up the priority knowledge with the children, like who was Etty Hillesum again, and they will bring their diaries to school. So I can have a quick look if they write something down, and if they want to let me read it, I can read it. And after this, the students are going to work with Etty's life. The route that Etty has traveled in her life consisted of different places, namely Middelburg, Deventer, Amsterdam, Westerbork, and Auschwitz. The students will work in groups with 2 or 3 people to find out how Etty felt during this road and what the environment looked like during this time and how they would feel if they lived in that time. They will work this out on the basis of a large white paper, which they can draw, paste, and so on. They can choose it themselves, so they can use their own creativity. That's why we work in small groups. Because when you work in a large group, the creativity is too much to work on white paper. And at the end, the students will present to each other what they've done and what they've found, so they can be proud of the results and they can show it. Then I have some additional lesson ideas. Idea 1 is in connection with the Second World War. You can walk the Stumbling Stones route with the students or another route in your city, because every city has something to do with the war. And you can do that. I personally walked the Stumbling Stone round in Zierikzee with the children, and I found it really interesting. And they were really asking a lot of questions about the war and about the people. So you really have to have some information also about the people. But they really wanted to know so much and they were really interested. So it was a success. The second idea, a music lesson in which the students write a melody or text themselves. They can express their own feelings with music, and they can use their own creativity and be who they are, just like Etty wants to know. Then the third idea is a drama lesson in which the students take a piece of Etty's diary or a quote they can choose, and they can make their own characters or they can choose a character that inspires them, and they can make a small play out of this. They can make their own texts, or they can use something out of the diary, so they don't have to make their own text. And then the fourth idea is that the students can write a letter to Etty, and they can ask questions of Etty. Bijvoorbeeld, for example, why did you leave the camp singing? They don't will get an answer, but they can write what they want and ask questions what they want. So they can, look for themselves van, so wat wil I extra know about Etty? Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Eeske Freesemann. I'm an Erasmus student from Germany, and I'm here from the start of February until July, and I'm studying at the university here, and I wanted to do something next to my studies. I'm studying offshore renewable energy here, and yeah, this is something totally different, but I wanted to learn something different. This is why I was looking for volunteer work, and I found the Etty Hillesum House and wanted to participate and support. And this is why I got into it. I talked to Lotte, and now I've been here for the third time. I'm working at the reception, help a little bit, selling tickets, introducing people into the exhibition, and also if they want, they will probably buy a book, and then I sell the book or postcards so they can take something home. And yeah, I was reading the diary and also the letters from Etty, and I want to talk about how it impacted me and also my generation, because I'm 23 years old, and the time she was writing her diary, she was 27 and 28, and I think it was for me really impressing to see how many similarities there are. I don't want to say that our life circumstances were the same. I don't want to compare her situation with mine, but I could see that there are a lot of things that she was talking about that I could see myself in, and I think it's it was really impressing for me seeing her process of growing up and learning about herself and trying to develop in her 20s. And it was really nice to see how she was dealing with the problems, that she was that there were all different things popping up in her life, and she was able to deal with them, and describing how she stays positive. This is like one of the most important things I could read out of the diary, that she was always staying positive, and that she's analyzing herself and never drowning in problems, that she's always trying to find a way out, and she's not judging people, or always sees the best in people and tries to not see the bad things but turn them into something good. And I think this process of writing down is a really good way to process things that happened in her life. And I think this is also important for our generation, or my or for myself, that you don't have to drown in self-pity, or just that the life has a purpose. And this is what she was always telling and reminding herself, that she has to move on, accept herself, and she shouldn't get herself down due to the things that are happening to her. And this staying positive aspect and turning bad things around, this is something that leads me to the topic of visiting the concentration camp in Sachsenhausen last year. I went there in my last summer, and for me it was really shocking to see how the circumstances of life were for people and how they treated people. And it took me several days to get through it, and see how people had to live, how they treated them, the housing conditions, for example, or medical experiments they did with people in the concentration camp. So it was really hard for me to see this, and that they put people in prisons. That they kept 300,000 people in Sachsenhausen during the World War, and this is to come back to Etty is really I don't know. I always have to say impressive, but it's really impressive for me to see that how she's describing her time in Camp Westerbork, that she's always staying positive, and even with these circumstances I was able to see and to read about in Sachsenhausen, that she was always staying positive and not letting, and she was always like she was having the willingness to live and not losing her power to fight against it and support people and be there for others, and not drowning into in their problems. And what should our generation learn from this is, I think it's really important to not always I can feel it in myself that you're sometimes drowning in the internet or losing yourself in other things, and that you're not really busy with yourself, analyzing yourself and trying to learn something. And I think it's really important that for example, also write a diary and be able to process things that appear on your way of growing up, and that we should stay together, learn from each other and analyze ourselves and make the best out of our lives. I think this is sometimes missing. I see it in myself, that there's a lot of space to get better and take Etty as an example to grow, and also write down how you want to process things in life. And one thing I want to mention as well is that we should never forget about what happened. And this is also why I brought this picture, and the other one. This is from this week. It's from Tuesday and Wednesday. Pictures I found from our news, that it was the 80th year anniversary of reminding what happened in Auschwitz. This is also the place Etty died later on, and it was about the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, and the Jewish people started to show residents about getting deported and dying. And I think it was 10,000 people went onto the streets to commemorate the Holocaust victims. And we can still see that it's still around, and that we should participate and never forget about it, and try to stay positive as Etty does. Okay. Thanks for listening.
Good afternoon. As you see, I'm going to talk about Jewish history in Middelburg. I'm Marcel Bezuijen, 57 years old, and I'm a history teacher in this town, and I've been that for 14 years now. I'm not used to talk in English like the young lady did, so I'll read it. But I would like to start with your finish. You said we should never forget, and that's one point I thought was very important for the excursion I did with my group. We should never forget, and that's a very good thing to point, I think. Thank you. Second, thank you. I've been invited to give you some information about Etty Hillesum and Holocaust education in general. We came in contact with the Etty Hillesum Foundation just recently, and the cooperation so far has been very pleasant and constructive, and therefore I am more than willing to participate in this afternoon. Let me give you some background information about our students so that you get an idea about the populations which we took to visit the Etty Hillesum House. Most of my students are 14, 15 years old, and they all live on the island of Bruyckere, and some of them on the island of Schouwen-Duiveland. It's an island above this place. The majority of my students were born and raised in here, but a small part are from various backgrounds. They come from Syria, they come from Palestine, Israel, some Morocco, Turkey, Suriname, Antilles. And their parents moved here several years ago as war refugees or because of better work conditions, for instance. The class I took to this house was the Lower General Secondary Education, 3rd grade. We call it MAVO, VMBO-TL. And it's a history class. So it's not literature, it's not philosophy, it's just history. And that's the background of my excursion here. And for my lessons, I'm always looking for opportunities to contact my teaching materials to matters of historical importance. I also think it's really important to link the theory of my lessons to local history. And therefore, in view of the students' populations, it's also important to offer information to the students in a lively manner. I thought May-Britt, or she has gone? Oh, she has already left. She told something about her students, 9, 10 years old. I think my students from 14, 15, maybe 16 years old also need a short introduction to the matter, and then they can read it afterwards, or they can look on the internet afterwards to what's really important. I don't know what your image is of those pupils, young people we have in our school today, but contrary to what was common in the past, roughly 30, 25 years ago, pupils nowadays find it difficult to concentrate on a subject matter for a longer period of time, let alone that they absorb enough information from the story they are told. Yep. For this specific excursion, it was also important that the concept of the Holocaust would be addressed the right way. There are more and more young people who are no longer educated on the matter of the Holocaust. Sometimes because it's denied completely, but also because teachers don't dare to address the subject in their lessons, due to sensitivities among certain groups. And I think that's a real problem. And that's another thing I would join to the photograph, the picture you showed. I saw another picture of Auschwitz this morning, of people who are sitting in front of the railway and taking selfies of themselves. Not like what you showed, but that's 2023 nowadays, and I think it's very important for young people to know what has happened over there. So I think all those students, back please, should be provided insight into the concept of the Holocaust. I think it's very important. So our program for this day, and now next please, consisted of information about of Etty Hillesum herself, a walk through the city past Jewish memorial contents, so as the stumblestones, the stolpersteinen. The students have made a graphic novel and a visit to the synagogue, and I will try and explain what they did that day. Each part lasted about 45 minutes, and the groups consisted of no more than 15 students, with a supervisor from the school present for each group. We had chosen to have this excursion on March 24th. In a later stadium, we realized this was the date the Nazis had declared Middelburg Judenfrei, free of Jews. I hope you understand. Yeah. The content of this excursion fully met the requirements I outlined above. The information about Etty Hillesum was offered in the form of a film, Etty Hillesum, Becoming Who You Are, followed by some extra information and an opportunity to ask questions to Lauda Maartens. Then the walk through the city with jewel memorial elements mainly led us past stumbling stones, where the students were given an explanation of the underlying idea behind this art project, and by laying down the stones they also immediately became acquainted with the Jewish customs. The making of the graphic novel was in line with the idea that it's important for everyone to record parts of his or her life, no matter how ordinary it is. And the visit to the synagogue, with an explanation by an employee, gave direct insight into the rituals that belong to the Jewish faith. More than enough variety in our program and still meeting our criteria of meaningfulness. Next, please. Our population is, as I said, 15 years old at secondary school level. They are practical, and it's often thought they are not really interested. Oh, that's it. In things that lie outside their realm of experience. And during this excursion, it turned out that was not true. I think most of them, and Lauda can say yes, okay, say. They were really interested in what the story of Etty and the Jewish history was in this town. Because we followed a varied program in small groups, the students were able to keep paying attention. The program has lasted a total of 4 hours, and despite the fact that there was no test afterwards, it turned out in the week that followed that this excursion that the students had learned something from it. I would like to connect some kind of test or assignment to this excursion in the future, but it's not yet done. This had not yet been introduced in this pilot phase. The fact that we connected the person Etty Hillesum, the concept of the Holocaust, and the stumbling stones added value to this educational project. The students have heard and seen things in their own environment that they were unaware of beforehand. Slide 7, please. The outcome of the excursion was the children had more knowledge of Jewish history of the city. The students know more of this part of the local history. Some of them had never heard anything about it, so it was all very new. They have more knowledge of Etty Hillesum as a Jewish victim of the Holocaust, which makes it more vivid for them. And now they have more knowledge of the works and ideas of Etty Hillesum. So that's a bit of the literature philosophic part of this museum. It should be clear that the presence of a center of this expertise in the field of this Jewish writer in our city, combined with a number of components that could be provided by various Jewish organizations, has considerable added value for education in this city. For our school, it will, hopefully, mean an annual excursion in which the expertise of the Etty Hillesum House can be used to introduce students to the life and work of Etty and the Jewish community in our city in a lively, varied way. I hope to have given you a clear picture of the possibilities that the Etty Hillesum House can offer when setting up and implementing educational programs. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them. Thank you. Yeah.
No question, but perhaps you can tell that one word,
yeah.
The lessons, and it was wonderful.
I remember she was sitting over here. It was the last group who had the information about Etty, and she had been in the synagogue before, and there she had heard that in the Jewish faith it is so that you die 3 times. If I say it right, yeah. First time is the death itself. The second time is death that your family doesn't tell about you. And the third time is that no one ever tells and knows you anymore. And she said, because of this house, Etty will never die. She had learned that from that day. And it was it was fantastic to hear that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I was wondering, is this just something that you did sporadically, or is this part of the curriculum of the school? So is it something that's returning every year?
It was the first time we did it in a in Holland we call it a pilot way. I don't know if it is in English. And let me say this, I hope that this will repeat every year. And now I only did it for a small group of students in the 3rd grade, and I hope it will become more and more. And I would like to have contact with May-Britt for her experiences for the lower groups. And I think it is a very valuable component of history teaching because of the local and the local history and the history about the Holocaust.
I think that's a great thing because my name is Stefano and I work for the anti-discrimination facility for all the municipalities of the province of Zeeland.
Yeah.
And what we see is a lot of anti-Semitism also in Zeeland.
Yeah.
And the problem that I see is how can we change these young people, the new generation, like the age that you were talking about. And I think this would be a very good example of how we can do that widely throughout the province with all the schools. So I could help you with that.
Okay.
I'm also in touch of all
Thank you.
the boards of the schools.
And I totally agree. I think it is a very valuable way of teaching about anti-discrimination. Yeah. Are there more questions?
Yeah, I had almost, well, a bit of the same question, but the question was, you did it in history class?
Yep.
But it could also relate to, I don't know, in English, maatschappijleer, because it relates to history, but also in a way of thinking.
I have experienced that it is better to start it in a small way and to have it grown in the years following. And I totally agree. I am also teaching maatschappijleer. Don't know the word in English. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
There is perhaps a bit of a sensitive topic which is related to the theme of Etty Hillesum and why she is important to future generations. And that is because her attitude to persecution is unfortunately not just in the past, and it's also happening in what you can see on your phone, watch on television, read in the newspaper, what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. And I wonder if that comes up when you take your students here, if there's some kid who raises his finger. I mean, we've heard presentations of younger children, and I can imagine that they will not make that connection so easily, but a 14 or a 15-year-old might say, hey, that's something like is happening today. Or is there no, did that not come up?
My group, the 3rd grade in, I don't know the word, the MAVO, is less aware of what's happening in the world, I think. Not all of them, but most of them. Because they have their own world in Instagram, Snapchat, you know, all that things. And the news they see is very related to their own lives. Ukraine, Russia. Last week I had a student who asked me, the war in Ukraine, is it still going on or something? That's so I have a lot to tell them. Yeah. Is that what you meant, or?
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'm looking into the light.
I was involved in setting up the project, and we consciously did not stress that point because it's up to anybody to decide how it relates and if it relates. And I wonder if it's not very important for the next generation to make that connection.
To make the connection between Etty Hillesum and the present? Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think it is it's the importance of teaching history to make a connection between every historical fact and the present and maybe the future. Yeah. So yes, that's one step we can take. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Who is Etty Hillesum and why should you read her?
Who is Etty Hillesum and why should you read her? Etty Hillesum was a remarkable woman who lived in Amsterdam at the time of the German occupation of the Netherlands during the Second World War. During the war, she kept a diary. She wanted to show us how to remain true to our loving selves under the pressure of war, humiliation and persecution. She spent time in the transit camp, Westerbork, from where Jews like her were sent on to the gas chambers of Auschwitz. There she wrote letters in which we can read about the horror of the Westerbork camp. She wrote, "I want to be there, right in the thick of what people call horror, and still be able to say, life is beautiful." If you read her diary, you will be drawn into her world. Her diary has the power to transform its readers. She records both her daily life and her inner life. She reflects on her relationships, on God, on womanhood, and the growing persecution of the Jews. If you read her, you will discover that Etty was a free-thinking, independent woman. You will discover her vivid and detailed descriptions of life in Camp Westerbork. But, above all, you will find testimony to the triumph of life over death, joy over resentment, peace over war, dignity over humiliation, hope over despair, and love over hatred. When Etty Hillesum began her diary in 1941, she was 27 years old. She had already spent over 6 years at Amsterdam University and qualified in law. She then took up the study of Slavic languages and was a fluent speaker of Dutch, German and Russian. She read books by Rainer Maria Rilke, Dostoevsky, Carl Jung and Saint Augustine. After the German conquest of the Netherlands in 1940, anti-Jewish laws forced Etty to give up her university studies. She refused to go into hiding to escape persecution. She wanted to share the fate of her fellow sufferers and, at her own request, she went to Westerbork. Dutch Jews were rounded up and sent to Westerbork concentration camp. From there, every Tuesday, more than 1,000 Jews were put on a train made up of cattle wagons and transported to Auschwitz in Poland, where they were murdered in the gas chambers. Etty had profound thoughts on life, the war, and persecution of the Jews. She believed that the brutality of genocide could not defeat the human values of love, peace, joy, happiness, respect and dignity, nor her own sense of the meaningfulness and beauty of life. She wrote, "I really see no other solution than to turn inwards and to root out all the rottenness there. I no longer believe that we can change anything in the world until we first change ourselves." At Westerbork, Etty supported the sick in the so-called hospital barracks, where she offered a listening ear to patients and helped them with practical matters such as shoe repairs or taking their letters to the camp postbox. While in the camp, she also worked with the Jewish resistance, smuggling children out of Westerbork into safe hiding. On life in the camp, she wrote, "The misery here is quite terrible, and yet the feeling that life is glorious and magnificent, and that one day we shall be building a whole new world. Against every new outrage and every fresh horror, we shall put up one more piece of love and goodness, drawing strength from within ourselves. We may suffer, but we must not succumb. And if we should survive, unhurt in body and soul, but above all in soul, without bitterness and without hatred, then we shall have a right to say, after the war." In June 1943, Etty was joined at Westerbork by her parents and brother Misha. Not long afterwards, she and her family were put in a cattle wagon bound for Auschwitz. "We left the camp singing," she wrote on a postcard while sitting in the cattle wagon. At Auschwitz, she was murdered on 30th of November 1943. The house where Etty was born, in Middelburg in the Netherlands, is now an institute for education, research, art and culture. On the Etty Hillesum House website, you can find out more about her life and her writing, including, for example, "I would so much like to live on, if only to express all the love I carry within me, carry into the new age all the humanity that survives in me, despite everything I go through every day. And there is only one way of preparing for the new age, by living it even now in our hearts." Please read her. Read her to learn more about how she developed the inner resilience to refuse hatred, to promote love, and find inner peace in the face of the most awful persecution. Read Etty Hillesum, her letters and diaries, for yourself.
So this brings us to the end of our program. I would like to thank each and every one of you for being present here and also online. I hope you enjoyed this day and feel inspired by our speakers. At the Etty Hillesum House website, you can find the material and you can order it just by sending an email to info@ettyhillesumhuis.nl. I would very much like to thank all the speakers and participants for this wonderful contribution. Thanks also to Wietse de Klerk and Nina Goedgebeuren for making the English translation of the film Etty Hillesum Becoming Who You Are. And of course, I would like to thank our partners from Canterbury, Philip Knight, Eduard Heining and Vicky Field from the poetry practice. And of course, many thanks to Miriam Caron and David Pugh from Kent and Leonie Corbin Goudsvaart from the Straits Committee to make this exchange project possible. Thank you very much. And of course, thank you very much to all our volunteers here today, assisting with everything. And many thanks to Rianne Wink for all the technical support and the live stream. So thank you. Now we have time for coffee and to see our materials. Thank you very much.